As it turned out, there were dozens of others already pursuing the same concept, so we were by no means first to market. At first, I was a little dismayed because I was so excited about the idea. I'm like, oh, everybody else is already doing it. But then I realized that was a good thing. You don't want to build a market on your own.
Well, I think you grew up in this area, so how did you move from the wonders of Miami to being in charge of one of the foremost companies in the industry today?
Well, I did grow up here, and my earliest sports memories and all of my sports memories from childhood are of Miami, and specifically the University of Miami. My father was a professor here. He has been for over 30 years. I can't remember anything other than Miami football, baseball games from my early childhood when it came to sports. I mean, that was sports for me. I think I missed maybe 2 or 3 games between the ages of 4 and when I graduated high school. And then I used to play at the University of Miami baseball camp. I got to meet Ron Frazier back when he was coach. Lots of fond memories of sports, and it's really where my love of sports first started.
Tell us a little bit about DraftKings. How did you and your co-founders come up with the idea, and how has the company evolved since in terms of the lines of business that it's engaged in?
So one of my co-founders, Matt, came to me with this, and he knew I was a huge fantasy sports fan, which at first I was a little nervous about because sometimes you think you might overrate an idea because, oh, I love that, that's me. But we did a bunch of research. I brought in our third co-founder, Paul, who now runs all of our technology and product. All 3 of us are still there. So, Matt brought me this idea, and I had been itching to do something entrepreneurial for years. I always had bad timing. My first time around was when I graduated from school, which was right after the tech bubble burst, so that didn't work very well. And then I was about to leave my first job in '08, so that wasn't exactly a great time to start a company. So when this came around, it was 2011, I knew this was the idea. I knew this is the thing. I said I'm going to do it this time. So we worked long nights and weekends. Every night after work, we go and stay till around 1, 2 in the morning at my co-founder Paul's spare bedroom in his house in Watertown, Massachusetts. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, we'd wake up around 7 or 8, and same thing. And eventually got to a point where we could raise a little money, and we quit our jobs, and the ride took off from there.
And what actually is fantasy sports for some of our audience who may not be familiar with the concept?
Fantasy sports is basically, the concept is you're like a fantasy general manager of a team. So you get to pick from all the players, doesn't matter if they're on different teams, and assemble your own team of real world players. Then when the games happen, those players' actual real game statistics are translated into fantasy points. So for example, 10 rushing yards might be 1 fantasy point. A touchdown might be 6 fantasy points. After all of your team's points are tallied up, you get ranked against other people that you're playing in contests with, and based on how well you do, you can win money.
How did DraftKings come to be number 1 in this space in the US? Was it by being first to market, or were there a number of other differentiators that have enabled you to kind of take the lead here?
So it's funny, when I first was brought this idea by Matt, I'd never heard of it, but as it turned out, there were dozens of others already pursuing the same concept, so we were by no means first to market. Our chief competitor, FanDuel, was about 3.5 years ahead of us. And at first I was a little dismayed because I was so excited about the idea. I'm like, oh, everybody else is already doing it. But then I realized that was a good thing. You don't want to build a market on your own, and if you can do things a little bit different and differentiate, then it was still early enough, I felt, because I was the customer. I was such a fan of fantasy sports, and I'd never heard of any of these things. So I felt like it was still early enough. So we looked at it and we said, all right, where do we think we can differentiate? And what we decided was really along 2 things: having the best technology and the best data and analytics. It took a few years, but I think everyone would pretty universally recognize our product as the best in market now. We certainly have the largest database, the largest customer base. We have the most revenue. It's about a year and a half or so ago we became number 1. So it took a little while to catch up, but we were sticking to our game plan of best technology, best analytics means you can optimize the product and build the product faster, you can optimize your marketing and everything else.
Having a professor of economics as your father growing up, did that really shape your career path, do you think? What kind of impact did that have?
Well, my father is he is a professor of economics. He's also a math and stats guy, so I think all that really rubbed off on me. He's also a big sports fan. He's the one, along with my mother, who really got me into sports at a young age. And up until I was in late teens, he always used to beat me at tennis too. He's pretty good at on the tennis court. But yeah, it's great to have family that loves what you're doing and is into sports. It's a common bond you can share your whole life, and obviously for me, I built a business around it, so it was pretty meaningful to me, and a lot of those early experiences came from both of my parents.
Okay, well, we appreciate having him as an economics professor here at Miami Business School, and thanks, Jason, for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.